So I'm tickled that you're here. We're all tickled that you're here. In fact, I am so grateful for everybody that's playing a part in this today. We have Dr. Katinka, who is going to be our main speaker, Dr. Hanali, her sister, who's also a practitioner there, Amanda, who handles the lightning process. She flew all the way from Portland, Oregon, so let's give her a hand for that. Thank you so much. And then we have Mark Lugering, who is back over here. He's going to be speaking today. He's local here in the northern Kentucky area. And then we have Tiara, who's going to kind of round us out with some alternative medicine and cannabinoids and the like. So I think we'll get we'll get a full spectrum of not only how we treat and care about chronic illness, but really what works, what doesn't. I'm here to kind of share a little bit about my story. I'm not going to go into the entire story, but what I wanted to do was share with you why I came up with the Burning Limb Foundation, what we do, how we do it, and really why it's important, and how you can play a role in that, both either as a beneficiary or a donor, or in, as we say in kind of the church world, the arms and legs of the organization. If you want to have a part in that, we'd love to have you. So let me just get started quickly. I'm not going to go through, I'm not one of those PowerPoint people that goes through line by line and talks about things, but I just wanted to point out a couple things here. Our mission essentially is to take those of us who have these chronic illnesses, we've been forgotten, we're on our last nickel, we've tried every treatment possible. We have, whether it's EDS, CRPS, POTS, fibro, any of these, alphabet soup things, we are at the end of our rope. We don't know where to go. And so what I tried to do was create an organization that goes out and solicit funds so that we can help you facilitate your treatment. When we talk about things like how we work, I'll touch on that in a minute, but ultimately, we're here to help that forgotten group. More often than not, women are 3 to 4 times more likely to experience these kinds of chronic illnesses. I can speak from experience with CRPS that by and large, women and younger women in general are more likely to have this. And so we've got a couple of programs, and one of them specifically is designed to help young women. So I'll talk about that briefly. You see our logo up there. I think this is one of the beautiful things. This kind of came to me one night. The colors represent, at least in those of us who have a chronic pain condition like CRPS, the fire and the ice. We're hot, alternatively we're cold. We have that burning sensation, that freezing sensation. But if you look, it's an infinity symbol. That happens to be my wife and I. This is my wife Tracy, by the way. She has been my rock over the last 5 years. But that infinity symbol, it's a never-ending loop. And to me, that represented something like, it's a never-ending pain cycle when we're in it. But alternatively, there's always hope. And we have to live in that, or I have to live in that ultimately if I want to live my life without that kind of crazy talk in my head. Let me go briefly to the next slide here. Okay, so what we do and why we do it. The why is pretty simple, right? Is that we're giving people an opportunity to find treatment where they have exhausted all hope in the traditional allopathic medicine world. For me, I still have tremendous traditional problems on a vascular level. So I still love the traditional medical community. But I think what failed me was all of the doctors that I went to, from the neurologist to the pain management specialist, to the guys that were going to put in the spinal cord stimulators and whatnot, they didn't know how to treat me. The pain management guy would send me to the gastroenterologist, and because I basically had peristalsis or had pain every time I ate or drank something, right? So that to me, was one of the problems. So we are basically trying to help you fund and fundraise your treatment. There is no qualification whatsoever. The only qualification, so I say there is one. We want you to be an active or taking an active part in your own recovery, which means you have a plan. If you don't have a plan, I'd love to talk to you. We can talk about options. I'm not the most knowledgeable guy about who has the best specialist in what particular geographic area. I have my own preferences, and that's mainly because of my own experience. I try and talk out of my own experience because that's simply what I know and what worked for me. I will say this, with respect to treatment programs, I stole this from my wife, and that is that it's one size fits one, right? Everybody is different. You may have EDS, you may have CRPS, you may have fibro. Everybody's treatment plan is different, and that is why we help you sort of get to that place, ultimately. The how. I basically go out and I fundraise, and when you're ready to take that treatment step, whether it be getting a service dog, or training a service dog, or doing physical therapy that copays don't pay for, or going to Inspira Clinic, right? Whatever the case may be, we will have those funds waiting for you when we have funds available. So our goal ultimately is to raise enough money so that we can have the funds ready and available for when you need it the most, right? So ultimately, we're there to be seed money for you. We want to help you fundraise. You have some ideas about fundraising. And then secondarily, as a nonprofit organization, we are still small enough that we're able to record keep each individual donation. If you do, let's say you're doing a fundraising drive for a family member, and you want to have friends and family donate to them specifically, take advantage of the nonprofit status, we can certainly accommodate that on an individual basis so that I don't take a salary. All of the monies that are donated, with the exception of some small administrative expenses like putting on this type of event, all that flows through directly to patient care. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out to you. I'll show you a slide at the end here briefly that shows kind of what our revenues were for last year. The key that I always look for is I want to keep our administrative costs low. So everything that I do, I think about ultimately, I want the most money to go to patients, the people who really need it the most. I think the why down at the bottom is very important because it talks about the practicality of it, the repeatability of it, and the way that we can measure. Our lives are generally measured on a scale of 1 to 10, right? If you've got a chronic illness, everybody's asking, what's your number? We have the ability to document, like for instance, when somebody comes to me and I send a grant form, one of the questions I ask is, what's your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? The reason why I ask, because it's a great data point for us to say, oh, you're out of treatment, you're home, how are you doing, right? And we can see meaningful reductions in that number. That is a discrete number. You can't fudge that, right? And even though there's some wiggle room in terms of each individual's experience, I can say that we started at a 10 and you're now down to a 2 or a 3 or even a 0, right? So that's one of the things I think that is important, is that we can help people document that. And that helps us as when we're fundraising to say that, hey, we've got 5 or 10 people this year that had meaningful reductions in their pain levels. So I talked about grant programs. First and foremost, I want to thank a couple of people here, specifically Dr. Katinka and the Inspira Clinic. They have been such proponents and huge supporters of our organization. Without them, this wouldn't exist, right? So most importantly, our donors are so important. So we've got on the program, you saw some of our sponsors. You got Brian Pope at the Cochrane firm. Brian is a CRPS-focused lawyer based in Dallas. He is a personal injury attorney. One of our sponsors will eventually be one of our board members. We've got just a tremendous group of people that are donating, and so one of them, the Elle Seiden Memorial Grant. Elle is a young girl who lived in Chicago. Her parents, tried everything that they could to really help her, and she lost her life to this illness. And so we created a specific grant program in honor of her memory. And so, you know, I really want to thank the Seiden and Ruda families. That's Vanessa and Jason, her parents, the Rudas, who are her grandparents, and all of their friends and family. They really funded us tremendously last year and allowed us to get off the ground. So that is a grant that's specifically for women, and more importantly for younger women. And then we also have a general grant program, which is kind of anybody, you know, they fall in the rest of the mix. Again, service dogs, physical therapy, and the like. The last thing that I want to touch upon. So last year we did about $90,000 in donor generated funds. Now this could be patients' families. This could be again people like the Seidens and the Rudas and their families coming together to help fund us. The numbers updated. Let's see if I can go back here. That was through December 31st of last year. As of this year, sort of through inception, you know, we've raised over $150,000, up to over 60 families. Again, and that runs the gamut from, you know, things like going to the Sparrow Clinic and the like. So we're really proud of that number. You know, I can't thank our donors and our sponsors enough for that. And then specifically today, you know, we've got NovaCare Rehabilitation. Mark's going to talk about his organization. They're one of our sponsors today. Thank you so much, Mark, for doing that for us. So what I want to leave you with is, you know, not my story, but really my message. And my message is one of hope, and that is the fact that if you try, you know, treatment is possible. People talk about, and I'll just use the Sparrow Clinic as an example, because this is always one of the phone calls that I hate to answer, because they say, I can't get there. Well, you know what? Thursday, Joe from the United Kingdom rang the bell and went home without any pain. And this is a woman who was confined to her bed, confined in a wheelchair. She spent probably over 2 years gathering the funds, watching the videos at the clinic, and saving the money. And they nickel and dimed it. They did bake sales, they did music, they did you name it, right? And while we helped, she did all the work. And this is a young lady who has a family to take care of. They didn't have the means, but what that shows you is that it is possible. So we want to help you get there. So if we can get you seed money, we're darn well going to try and do our best to get you off on the right foot. So with that, I want to introduce our first speaker. And today, our first speaker is going to be Amanda. I met Amanda Ashley. I met Amanda 2 years ago at the RSDSA conference in Arkansas. I love what she is doing, because I think that the emotional side of it, the spiritual side of it, is so important to deal with, because all of us have traumas, myself included. If you don't deal with those traumas, you're more than likely to fall back under those old patterns of thinking. But I want her to speak about that. So Amanda, why don't you come on up here and talk about that?